So we think that reliability is improving significantly across the board in North America and elsewhere. In fact, there's a lot of studies that show as of last year, we had over 90% reliability for customers in the fast charging space. But of those issues that remain, we realize there are some things like payments, which we still have not yet resolved.
Welcome to another podcast episode for the Electric Vehicle Innovation Summit Global. I am Joseph Alcantara, the head of marketing for EVIS Global, and joining me today is a very special guest from CharIN, who is going to be part of EVIS America that will be happening in Toledo, Ohio this November. Today's conversation is about what drivers and fleets care about most and what policymakers are funding at unprecedented scale. A charging ecosystem that is reliable, interoperable, and built to last. I'm joined by Erika Myers, the Executive Director of CharIN North America. CharIN is a global charging technology association focused on universal open standards and interoperability, bringing together automakers, charging companies, component suppliers, utilities, and grid operators. As a premier partner of EVIS America 2026, CharIN brings expertise on standards-based approaches that support a reliable and future-proof charging ecosystem. Erica also brings nearly 2 decades of experience across the EV and clean energy sector, including leadership roles focused on policy, infrastructure investment, and market alignment. Please welcome to the pod, Erica. Hi, Erica.
Hey, Joseph, thank you so much for having me here today.
We are very excited to dive deeper into this conversation and for CharIN to be a premier partner of EVIS America. So, probably to kick things off, for those people who are meeting you or hearing you for the first time, what does CharIN North America actually do day to day, and what problems are you trying to solve in the ecosystem?
Absolutely. So, CharIN is a membership based organization. We have over 300 members across the EV charging ecosystem. And we work with our members to determine what is the most important issue that we need to tackle most imminently. So, a lot of what we do is around standards and making sure that those standards are being applied correctly across all the charging hardware and software. And we support things like testing events that will bring the industry together to make sure that those pieces of equipment do, in fact, work together as intended. And so we really rely on our industry partners to steer the direction of the organization, and we are here to serve them.
Wow, that is a very important piece of the puzzle, I would say. And your team and your association bringing together all the key stakeholders. That is a huge part of what this entire ecosystem is actually composed of. And then one big factor to it, when I read through what CharIN is doing and from your website and your socials, I always see the word interoperability.
Yes.
When we say interoperability, what does it actually mean in practice for the drivers, the fleets, and the charging operators?
It's a very simple definition. It means that every vehicle works with every charger every time. That's it.
Love the simplicity of it, right? I'm thinking though, with that simplicity, especially for us, the consumers or the drivers, for sure, there will be a lot on the background that are happening for that simplicity to be brought to life, right? So we've seen the progression of this ecosystem and this industry, but what do you see would be the biggest frictions today that can probably still be improved or enhanced or part of the pathway when it comes to the development? Is it hardware compatibility or software and communication, payments, operations, maintenance, or what other factors?
So I wouldn't say there's one category that is creating friction in the EV charging ecosystem. I would actually point to the fact that we have many different industry players. All of them are at a different part of their journey on the EV charging integrations. And so we need to make sure that we're all aligned as an industry around the adoption of certain more advanced standards and that those differences in the standards integration don't actually impact the customer experience. So that's why we have things like testing events, which are open to anyone, not just CharIN members. to participate. And we are also rolling out a new conformance testing series of labs. So CharIN is also implementing what we call our CharIN conformance test certifications, which allow different industry players to be able to test whenever they need to. So some of the limitations of our testing events is that they're usually only quarterly or biannually. And so that's maybe not be as frequent as needed by the industry. So we think this will eliminate all the remaining friction points in the industry and get us to boring reliability metrics, which we all want.
Love that. And I love that one of the key parts of the support that you're providing would be the testing component, because especially in a very new industry, the way to go is test and learn or test and optimize. So within the context of the testing that Sharon is a huge advocate for, what are the common causes of, say, for example, the poor charging sessions today that you are discovering when the tests are done, and which ones are the most fixable within the context of standards that you find through this testing processes that your team is doing?
Absolutely. So we think that reliability is improving significantly across the board in North America and elsewhere. In fact, there's a lot of studies that show as of last year, we had over 90% reliability for customers in the fast charging space. But of those issues that remain, we realize there are some things like payments, which we still have not yet resolved. US Consumer Reports published a study last year that showed that roughly 25% of all issues in the field were related to payments. Either a payment had started and was the customer was getting charged, but the charging session was never initiated, or a payment failure occurred. So we think that those are really fixable with something called plug-in charge, which is part of an ISO 15118 standard. And our hope and aspiration is that makers and EV charging companies offer plug-in charge, which is essentially a very seamless way for an authentication to occur through the vehicle itself, through an uploaded credit card in the app, that allows a consumer to get away from RFID cards or forbid credit card readers, which we know are notoriously unreliable. So we think that these are great workarounds and provide a much better customer experience.
Yeah, I think that's a really clear and tangible and specific solution that I'm sure that the operators or the service providers are working towards. And I love, that ISO is incorporated into the process to
Mhm.
make sure that there's a standard that folks are aiming for when it comes to the guidelines and the procedures that would have to be met, right? So knowing that it's going to be a journey, it's not, yes, we've defined a possible solution, we've defined the potential pain points and the addressable opportunities for it. But if we are going to look at the next 12 months, for example, if there are priority actions to be done in a 1 year horizon to be able to achieve this reliability and to make sure that the industry is progressing, what would you say would be the key pivotal points in the next 12 months that operators and the ecosystem should be focusing on to help achieve the reliability?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of things that can be done in a year. We have seen quite a bit of replacement of legacy infrastructure, which we knew had some issues on interoperability. So replacing older systems with newer systems that are built to higher standards is, of course, probably the most tangible thing that could be done. But we know there's a lot of charging infrastructure out there, so that can relate to some cost challenges for a lot of CPOs. So on the interoperability side of things, we encourage people again to work with organizations like CHAR and get that peer-to-peer knowledge at events like our testivals, get a chance to understand what the latest is in charging standards and best practices and implementation, really getting a chance to educate themselves on what they could do to overcome maybe some in-field challenges that they've experienced. So I would say education and understanding are probably the most tangible things that any charging team could do to support their their systems.
That is very helpful. So, for folks who would be listening and would be taking away the point that, okay, Sharon is there to support me, to help me be educated, what can you walk us through the step by step process in which how they can engage with Sharon, how they can be supported so that folks can really approach it correctly and be prepared when it comes to what they can offer and what they can take away?
Yeah. So we have many different task forces, focus groups, different projects we're working on that members can get engaged in and get a chance to have opportunities to work together around standards and interoperability issues. And we would encourage folks to actively participate to the extent that they can in those discussions. Sometimes participation looks like just listening in on a call. Sometimes participation looks like writing reports, right? So there's very different ways that someone can engage. But regardless, what we hope to do is capture that knowledge because there's some of the smartest people in the entire planet who participate in these activities. Getting a chance to harness that knowledge and then redistributing it and sharing it so that everyone benefits is really what we're trying to do.
And then, Erica, on the flip side, because making sure that the credibility is there, the know-how of CharIN is there, and to your point, the experts in the room are really there to support. How is CharIN getting in touch with the regulators, the operators, the thought leaders, the experts? How is that process being integrated into your system, and how is that filtered to the members who would be able to really enrich their knowledge and apply those expertise in their day to day?
Yeah, so that's a great question because a lot of times many companies have, a policy team and then they have like a technical team. And usually those teams aren't working together necessarily every day. So, what I think is really unique about CharIN is that we have those groups as well, but we do have them overlapping in a way through CharIN facilitation to support the development of CharIN's positions around certain policies and regulations in a way that I think is much more technically sound and built with a lot of that feasibility in mind when we're proposing things to regulators and policymakers. So, for example, one of the things that we've been working on is this transition to new standards here in North America, the North America charging system and the megawatt charging system, and making sure that policymakers, first of all, know that these new standards exist, that they're now published and available to everyone, but then also making sure that we aren't inadvertently excluding them from certain infrastructure programs, funding or requirements or what have you, just making sure we're educating and providing that technical awareness and assistance to those decision makers. So I think that that's something, that's very unique to Chara and that maybe other groups have not done historically.
Yeah, that's great. It's like you're in the middle. It's like the push and pull is actually harmonized. The policymakers and at the same time the suppliers. You're like the bridge. The bridge is both, right? Which is really a great, should we say, part of the solution to make sure that this entire journey of the EV industry would really be on that positive and also an upward trend that will, at the end of the day, benefit the folks on the ground, just
Yeah.
like us as regular consumers, right? You've mentioned about policies and policymakers. Just coming from a curious interest from my side. What are you seeing the policymakers are getting right, and where are the gaps that the private sector needs to help close so that the gaps can be addressed and those possible concerns can be addressed so that we can progress within the entire industry and space?
Yeah, so we have been seeing a lot of great reception by policymakers around these new charging standards and the genuine interest and wanting more information. So we've responded to a lot of requests for information or RFIs over the last couple of years on the development of the new standards, but not only that, but also what is the actual uptake by the industry around these new standards. So there's been some genuine curiosity, which we've been really excited about. But where I think we need to fill in some gaps is around other kinds of programs, like from electric utilities, which also offer infrastructure funding for public investments around hardware, software, backend, make-ready systems. We want to make sure that those also integrate new charging standards and that aren't necessarily excluding certain progress around the technology, because we think that NACS and MCS are both obviously very great standards that we need to continue to transition towards. And that's one of the things I think we've been talking about a lot in the last couple of years, is this transition away from CCS1 to these new standards, and that we have to do it in a harmonized way, and realizing that there's going to be legacy equipment that will be out there for a long time. So how do we continue to support the legacy equipment, but how do we also make progress? And so that's, I think, the biggest role CharIN plays is helping with that alignment, being that neutral platform, that convener that everyone comes to for the technical advice.
Love that, which I think is a perfect segue to your participation in EVIS America. So, the platform has been longstanding in the Middle East region for the last 5 editions. It is the first time this year that the Electric Vehicle Innovation Summit is being brought here in the US, in Toledo, Ohio, and you, as one of the premier partners, we are very excited. What are you expecting to see in this event that we are staging in November? And what can the participants expect from CharIN as a premier partner to this EVIS America event that we would be staging?
Yeah, we're excited to participate. We've been working with EVIS for a long time in the Middle East, and so it's great to see you guys expanding your content elsewhere. Where I think I'm personally interested in is understanding the community of tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers, and helping them understand what this transition actually means for the industry and the customers that they serve, which is, of course, the automakers in that belt around the Detroit area. And just getting a chance to share not what CharIN knows about this transition, what they know about the transition. So I think information sharing is, of course, really vital. And for CharIN, we are always on the lookout for recruiting members. So please come
Yes.
say hi to me at our booth and ask me questions about what membership might mean for you.
That's great. For those folks who would be attending, because in the Middle East region, majority of the folks who are attending are coming from the Middle East or Europe. And then here in the US, most likely, most of the attendees will be coming from North America, but probably some parts of the world as well when it comes to the entire ecosystem. For sharing membership, is it going to be just concentrated in North America when it comes to the standards, the policies, procedures, and the education and sharing of know-how, or will it be global? Because understanding that there are different standards globally when it comes to the industry, and how do we bridge the gap when it comes to differences when it comes to per market, per country operations within the EV space?
Yeah. So one of the great things about CharIN is we are a global organization. So I represent our North America members, but we have counterparts like myself in every single continent. So we can bring you to the right folks in those regions. If you have questions, for example, if you want to start marketing to Latin America, or you want to go to Europe, or you want to go in Asia, we can connect you to lots of great knowledge and resource to help you with driving your regional market outreach programs. Yes, I'm just one person of many. So happy to connect you as needed.
I'm sure that that's great news to everyone, because they now would have that formed understanding that yes, it's going to be staged here in the US, but when it comes, even for CharIN, when it comes to their reach and know how, it's a global organization. So people can definitely reach out, and there will be opportunities for them to become members and to benefit from what CharIN can provide. So with that, I would just want to remind everyone that CharIN again would be in the EVIS America event in Toledo, Ohio on November 3 to 5, 2026. The registration will be opening very soon on our website. And if you would be interested to become a speaker, a partner, or an attendee, go into our website and socials, fill in the form, and we look forward to seeing all of you there. Me and Erica would be there, and we'll be looking forward to saying hi to everyone. Any parting words, Erica, that you would want to bring the EVIS podcast audience before we say bye?
Just thank you so much again for having me here today. And if you have any questions about CharIN, feel free to reach out to me or go to our website, charin.global.
Thank you so much, Erika.